Ever wonder how a real superpower, like a true giant, begins to fall apart? For centuries, the Ottoman Empire was just unstoppable. But even titans stumble. And we're going to dive into this really specific 133-year window where the very first cracks, almost invisible at first, started to show. And these cracks, they set off a chain reaction that would literally change the map of the world. Okay, so our whole story fits between these two dates you see here. Think of them as bookends. 1566, that's the end of a golden age, right? It's the year one of their greatest rulers dies, and the empire is at its absolute peak. Then you have 1699, and that's the year the decline becomes official, like written down in black and white on a treaty that changed everything. So how in the world did they get from A to B? Let's find out. To really get the scale of this fall, you first have to understand the incredible height they fell from. So picture this, it's 1566. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent has just passed away. And under his watch, the empire wasn't just powerful. It was kind of the center of the universe, an absolute dazzling peak of land, money, and culture. So what happens when the guy who built all that, the main architect of this golden age, is suddenly gone? Well, almost right away, right after hitting that high point, things started to go wrong. And the crazy part is, the threat wasn't coming from outside enemies. Nope. The cracks started appearing from inside the empire itself. The first dominoes were already starting to wobble. And that first big domino, it was leadership, the succession. For generations, their system for who gets the throne next was, it was brutal for sure, but it was clear. Everybody knew the rules. But after Suleiman, that system just fell apart. It became messy, chaotic, and it led to a whole series of weaker sultans. And you know what they say, when the head is unstable, the whole body starts to shake. This right here, this shows you that internal decay perfectly. Just look at the left side. During Suleiman's era, you've got stability, right? A clear line of succession and the ironclad discipline of the Janissaries, their elite soldiers. But then, look over at the right. After 1566, the succession becomes this total free-for-all, this messy power grab. And guess what happens to the Janissaries? Their discipline completely evaporates. They start acting like kingmakers instead of soldiers. It was like a poison spreading right through the heart of the empire. And of course, when an empire is rotting from the inside, it's like blood in the water for sharks, right? The chaos at the top did not go unnoticed. The empire's rivals, the ones who had been terrified of Ottoman power for centuries, suddenly saw their chance. They saw weakness, and that invited pressure from the outside, leading to wars on multiple fronts. So the empire basically found itself stuck in a vice. You had the powerful Habsburgs coming at them from the west in Europe, and from the north, you have this ambitious, growing Russian empire. And we're not talking about quick little skirmishes here. These were long, brutal, draining wars that just sucked the money and the manpower right out of the empire. And it really exposed just how weak they'd become on the inside. So for more than 100 years, you have all these problems just chipping away at the empire's foundations. Weak leaders, a military losing its edge, these endless, expensive wars. It was a really slow burn. But that slow, simmering decline, it was about to explode into one single, massive, catastrophic event. An event that would make it impossible for anyone to deny what was happening. 1683. Just burn that year into your memory. This is the exact moment that slow decline turns into an absolute free fall. So what happened in 1683? The Ottomans went for the knockout punch. They decided to capture Vienna, which was basically the heart of their biggest European enemy. But this huge, ambitious campaign just shattered. It fell apart right at the city gates. And the defeat wasn't just a loss on the battlefield. Oh no. It was a deep, public, humiliating catastrophe. The idea that the Ottomans were invincible, that myth was broken forever. And every power in Europe was watching. Yeah, a defeat that big, that spectacular, it always have consequences that ripple out way beyond the battlefield. That failure at Vienna kicked off an even bigger war, a string of more losses, and it finally forced the empire to do something they hadn't done in a long, long time. Come to the negotiating table as the losing side. It was time to make their new, weaker reality official. And that's exactly what happened in 1699 with the Treaty of Karlowitz. Now, this was not just another peace deal. This was a game changer. For the very first time in its history, the Ottoman Empire was forced to give up huge chunks of its territory. It was basically a formal admission, in writing, that they weren't the top dog anymore.
And that just perfectly sums up the whole story, doesn't it? Think about it. In just 133 years, the empire went from the absolute peak of its power under Suleiman, all the way to signing a treaty giving up land. Every single one of those dominoes that started to wobble back in 1566 led them straight to this point.
I mean, that is just a stunningly fast fall from grace. When you watch that whole chain reaction, from one little crack in leadership all the way to a shattering defeat, it just leaves you with this massive question, doesn't it? Once those dominoes start to fall for a great power, can that decline ever really be stopped? Or is this just how it goes? Is this the inevitable life cycle of every great empire?